I don't think they said nos enough times in this movie. Hey everybody, welcome to Mainly Movies. As part of my Fast and Furious review series, today I'm going to be talking about the 2001 action racing movie, The Fast and the Furious. If you're new here, please consider subscribing for a variety of movie-related content like reviews, rank lists, and trailer reactions. All my reviews include a breakdown of the pros and cons, my rating, and some tailored film recommendations, so be sure to watch through to the end of this video for all that extra content. The Fast and the Furious stars Paul Walker, Vin Diesel, and Jordana Brewster, and was directed by Cohen. It tells the story of illegal street racer Dominic Toretto, played by Vin Diesel, as racing newcomer Brian, played by Paul Walker, works his way into the racing crew with suspicious motives. With F9 hopefully drifting into theaters next May, I wanted to take the opportunity to talk about all of the movies in the Fast and Furious franchise. So today I'm kicking off my latest franchise review series with the one that started it all, The Fast and the Furious. There's no denying that this franchise is ridiculous. It gets a lot of flack. Much of it rightfully so, but there's also no denying that it's extremely entertaining and has achieved a longevity and degree of cultural impact far beyond that of any of its conspecifics. Now, I want to admit right at the beginning of this review series that I like this franchise. It's definitely had its ups and downs, and like I said, it's completely ridiculous, but I've genuinely grown to non-ironically enjoy these movies. Throughout the 2000s, I was aware of the franchise, but I had never seen any of the films, nor did I have much interest in doing so. It wasn't until after the fourth movie was released that the franchise truly entered my radar. You see, my dad really likes these movies. It kind of started as a joke where he played up and exaggerated his enjoyment of the films, but as more and more of the movies came out, each progressively more over the top and ridiculous as the last, he wasn't really joking anymore. So watching and rewatching these movies with him has certainly made me enjoy the franchise more than I probably otherwise would have. Anyway, let's narrow the focus down to this first film. On its face, The Fast and the Furious has no business being as enjoyable as it is to me. I'm not a car person, and by extension, I'm not an admirer of the street racing subculture, so I really have no connection to the topical heart of this movie. Plus, as many people have noted, this story is essentially Point Break with cars, another movie that I've never connected with on a deeper level. But despite the obvious plot similarities, there are a number of differences, and I think the one that I appreciate the most is how long this film keeps us in the dark about Brian's intentions. It's not until almost 40 minutes into the movie that things become clear to us, and I think it was a fairly effective way to keep the audience engaged in the story, especially if car talk, silly macho fighting, and street racing don't particularly pique your interest. The plot may be derivative, it might be cheesy and far-fetched, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't find this to be an enjoyable and satisfying story. While the later films in the franchise shed the obviousness of their time period a bit, the first few are most definitely products of their time. This first film in particular is so steeped in early 2000s culture that watching it's almost like opening an adrenaline and testosterone-filled time capsule. The hip-hop and nu metal heavy soundtrack, the superfluous rave and party scenes, the clothes and hairstyles, and just the way people spoke. And of course, we can't forget the ridiculously cheesy speed CGI. Most of these things were worthy of eye rolls even at the time of release, but now, nearly 2 decades later, they're almost endearing in an odd way. In spite of that endearing quality, there are definitely aspects of this movie that are just no good. The script has its decent moments, but there's a lot of downright awful dialogue in this movie. It's often incredibly cheesy and unnatural sounding. Some of the line delivery is kinda laughable, and there are moments where I have to believe that Paul Walker was intentionally trying to channel Keanu Reeves' Johnny Utah, cause otherwise the sort of surfer dude accent and slang make no sense. It also doesn't help that the film takes itself very seriously, despite how absurd it all is. Besides Dom and Brian, the other characters are incredibly underdeveloped and one-dimensional, most notably Letty, who doesn't do much beyond sneering here. And then we've got the racing scenes. I know I already mentioned the CGI, but it's so rough. Even the practical effects sequences are edited in a kind of nauseating way, with a lot of shaky cam and some really quick cut editing. I will admit, though, that I never get tired of seeing Letty drive underneath tractor trailers. I think this is one of those movies that I appreciate and enjoy more, knowing that it's just part of the whole. I know that's kind of cheating when I'm supposed to be talking about just the one movie, but I can't help it, because in my personal experience with the film, it's never been a standalone movie. I'm really not sure how I would have felt about this one if I'd seen it back in 2001 when it first came out, but knowing that it spawned such a long-lived franchise of progressively more outrageous and over-the-top movies forces you to look at the original film in a different light. As ridiculous as this movie is, it's actually comparatively tame. Here, we see the humble beginnings of this franchise. The characters are all super young, and all they want to do is drive fast, win some car races, and steal DVD players. There's something to be said about a Fast and Furious movie where the most outrageous thing that happens is a Charger doing a wheelie. This franchise sure has come a long way. Alright, let's talk about the pros and cons. Pro number one is the story. And I know that might sound crazy, because this film's got a very far-fetched and derivative plot, but I actually really enjoy it. The later movies get more and more involved, but this first one is very simple, and I think that's part of why it works so well. Because even if you're not a car or racing person, the mystery and crime thriller elements of this are really compelling. And because it is the first movie, there's no established backstory that you need to know in order to fully enjoy and understand the film. So yeah, it is basically Point Break. Car racing instead of surfing, Dom instead of Bodhi, Brian instead of Johnny, but it's also just a surprisingly satisfying story. The second pro is the setup that this film provides for the franchise. Again, I realize that it might kinda be cheating to use this as a pro for the first movie, but it establishes nearly everything that the rest of the franchise builds upon. We get the introductions of most of the mainstay characters, establish the types of relationships among all of them, set up the central theme of family that runs through the core of all the films, and also set the initial bar for the action, which has been one-upped by each subsequent film. The story and characters might be ridiculous, but there's something cool about seeing the evolution of this franchise. On the con side, the biggest issue has gotta be the racing scenes. Some of the practical effects sequences that kick off and close the movie are decent, but the CGI heavy races are just ridiculous. The biggest offender here has gotta be Brian's street race against Dom. The speed effects and CGI zoom moves from car to car might have looked cool in 2001, but are hopelessly cheesy and dated now. If you're not able to glean some nostalgic enjoyment out of these moments, they could be really hard to look past. It's amazing to see how far this franchise has come with these types of sequences. The second con is the dialogue. At least some of it. This movie's actually got some decent and quotable lines, mostly delivered by Dom, but a lot of the other dialogue's a bit rough. I guess it could have been intentional given the character's backstory, but many of Brian's lines come across so awkward and insincere. And then almost any time a character has a one-liner, whether we're talking a main character or an extra, the delivery is awful. I think it's largely because the story and dialogue are pretty silly, but it's all presented in such a self-serious way, so there's this weird disconnect. As the franchise progressed, it got more and more self-aware and embraced the silliness, but the super straight delivery here makes the dialogue stand out a bit more. Before I give you my rating and recommendations, I want to remind you that if you're interested in buying The Fast and the Furious or any of the other films I mentioned today, I do have affiliate links for all of them in the description below. I get a small commission from anything you buy using one of my links, so I'd really appreciate it if you use them if you're in the market for any of these movies. I'm gonna give The Fast and the Furious 3.5 out of 5 paws. It's a stupid, derivative action thriller, but it's an enjoyable one for me, and set the stage for this absurd and entertaining franchise. I would recommend The Fast and the Furious to people who are interested in getting into the Fast and Furious franchise, or anybody looking for a silly, fun action movie from the 2000s. Obviously, this is the logical place to start with a watch-through of the series, but it should be noted that this is a dramatically different type of movie than what you might be used to seeing or expecting based on impressions of the more recent installments. There's also a lot of car talk and racing focus, so if you're into that or love seeing NOS deployed by every car in every race, you'll probably enjoy this one. If you liked The Fast and the Furious, I would recommend Point Break. This one's an absolute no-brainer for me because it's essentially the same movie. Swap cars for surfing and you're all set. If you want another Fast and Furious movie, I would recommend Fast and Furious, the fourth movie in the series. It's the movie where the series really starts to ramp up, but it's also the first film since the original one where all the main characters are back together again. And if you enjoy this style of movie and like the big truck action set pieces, you might want to check out The Hurricane Heist. It's another Rob Cohen directed film and is completely absurd, but has a number of moments reminiscent of Fast and Furious. Alright, a couple questions for you guys. Number 1, have you seen The Fast and the Furious? If so, what'd you think of it? And number 2, what's your favorite long-running franchise? Be sure to leave your answers in the comments below so we can get a discussion going. Alright, so if you got some enjoyment, insider information out of this review, I'd appreciate it if you'd hit that like button. And if you haven't done so already, please hit subscribe while you're at it to see more videos like this. Till next time, this has been Alyssa with Mainly Movies, the way life should be.